Hello and welcome along to the VMTV Rugby Pod. Matt, the Heineken Cup Finals upon us on Saturday in Marseille. Four-time winners Leinster go up against the beaten finalists last year, La Rochelle. Matt, it's going to be a pretty exciting day, isn't it?
Yeah, cracking day. To start with, it's going to be 30 degrees. That's the forecast. A very, very hot day. 29 degrees by 6 o'clock kickoff time. So that's going to be tough for Leinster. But I think it's a beautiful day because one team is going to get redemption. Both of these teams have lost their last final in the Heineken Cup. So one team's got redemption and one team's got two losses in the Heineken Cup final. So there's real joy for one side and real pain for another. It's a great venue for the people who've ever been there. It's a magnificent stadium. It will be packed, and I expect with a lot of blue. And I think it's a game, a matchup with so many dimensions that's worthy of a final. You know, a huge Irish interest. Ronan O'Gara and Donica Ryan coaching La Rochelle, their island's favourite team in France, up against Leinster. And Leinster have just been imperious this year. They've demolished everyone they've played against. Can La Rochelle, under Irish coaching, rise up? You know, the Munster factor against the Leinster factor again. There's so many great aspects to this with so many great players in form on the field. It's truly a final worthy of a great competition.
Alan, you're heading over to Marseille. I'm sure you're very, very excited, but there's some great matchups over the park, aren't there?
I'm very excited to go for the final. I'm not very excited to meet all the Leinster fans on the way who'll be slagging me about my old team Munster. But Leinster have been brilliant. Matt said it. Top class. You have to admire what they've done, the type of rugby they're playing, and you know the amount of tries and the attacking intent that they've shown throughout this competition. I think they're a brilliant side, full of internationals. Full of quality and confidence and self-belief in what they're doing. And, you know, obviously there's a great kind of subplot to this about what happened last year in the semi-finals when La Rochelle beat Leinster in that semi-final and knocked them out. Leinster are probably better this year. La Rochelle are probably going to have to, find something special. But, Matt mentioned as well, Ronan O'Gara, Donica Ryan. I think it adds a little bit of spice to it, doesn't it? But, finals are special for all these players playing tomorrow. And someone's going to be really, really joyful and happy in the end. Leinster will either get the 5th star or La Rochelle will get their first one. So loads of intrigue in this game, loads of great matchups. And, you have to say Leinster probably on paper look the stronger, more balanced side. La Rochelle have serious amount of power in certain areas and very physical players, and they're going to have to find and bring that physicality and intensity tomorrow to match Leinster and be on a par.
Matt, as Alan says there, La Rochelle do have plenty of power. We've seen that in last year's semi-final. But will they have enough, or Leinster just taking their game to a different level?
That's the question, Stu, isn't it? Like, I think everyone knows what Leinster are going to do. They're coming out, they're playing their way. There's going to be no ambush or subtlety. Leinster are playing a game at an incredible tempo. Their ruck speed at certain times leading up to tries is under 1.5 seconds. So from the time the player comes into contact, the Leinster ball carrier comes into contact with the defender, to the time that ball leaves the hands of Jamison Gibson Park is under 1.5 seconds. I mean, that's the skill level required to do that once is pretty extraordinary. To do it multiple times in a game and multiple times in one movement leading up to a try is extraordinary. It's great skill. It's skill on a level that we haven't seen. But we're used to skillful backs, but this is skill from forwards as well. The passing, the footwork, the ability to clear out, the great placements. It's probably the best Leinster forward pack I've seen in my 25 years watching Leinster or being involved with Leinster and watching Leinster ever. So and there's Leinster, as Quinny knows, had some great forward packs over the years. But the question then is, what do La Rochelle do to stop it? We know what's coming, but how do you stop it? Now, they'll target the breakdown. They'll target the scrum for sure. Antonio, tight end prop, wow, man, the man's a beast. Whether Will Skelton starts or comes off the bench, it remains to be seen. But that's where they'll go for them, at the breakdown and at the scrum. And they have been very effective at the breakdown. They've turned over ball at the breakdown phenomenally. Their technicality and their work and bravery at the breakdown, that is La Rochelle's bravery, has been extraordinary. They did it so well against Racing last week. The week before that in the top 14 against Toulouse, they were equally as brave and equally as demanding at the breakdown, but they were technically just a little bit off and they got penalised, probably cost the game. So La Rochelle are going to have to play at their best, target the breakdown and not give away penalties for touching the ground or being off the feet while they do it, and find a way to disrupt Leinster that no one else has been able to do. It's a big ask for La Rochelle. Not impossible, but it's a big ask.
Alan, you were some man for disrupting the breakdown. How do they go about doing it? Is it Aldrich? Is it Vito? How do you slow that ball down? You did it for a long time, so any tips for the lads?
Well, not to give away penalties anyway, because Johnny Sexton will kick them. It's a fine line between being confrontational and really aggressive and getting your timing right. Matt will know this as a coach. You can't tell certain players, well, be over cautious and don't give away penalties. That's the heat of the moment stuff. But I think it starts with the gain line. It's always more difficult to slow a team down or stop their flow or momentum if they're winning collisions and getting over the gain line. And it's very obvious Leinster's ruck speed has been incredible. Or a second and a half, under 2 seconds is incredibly quick. Gibson Park then very intelligent footballer, making good decisions, getting it into Sexton's hands if he needs be early. Or those forwards, those little wraparounds that we saw Toulouse sit down defensively a couple of times, and then Leinster can exploit spaces in the middle with really good lines and timing of pass. So it will obviously. Part of the breakdown, Stuart, is you need a bit of old doggedness. You need a bit of old school stuff. You need to have desire, aggression, anger, work rate, whatever you call it, and a real relentlessness to keep going time after time. I think, we go back to, the second half probably in Leicester for Leinster. They were 20 points up in the first half, and Leicester did, raise their aggression levels a bit, and but the damage was done. The speed of ruck and the pace of the game, we saw them against Toulouse again, just speed of ruck. It's very hard to stop Leinster. And then they're very skillful players who are very cohesive and connected, and they seem to know what each other is doing very well. So that's the challenge for La Rochelle. I think, win the collisions, stop Leinster getting over the gain line. And then you want, Aldred is a very, very good player at the breakdown. Liebenberg is good at the breakdown. Pierre Bougeret, the hooker, brilliant at getting turnovers. So it's easier said than done. You can go out with this plan to stop their breakdown, and sometimes there's nothing you can do because they're such a good side at keeping hold of the ball, and they're so efficient, and they're really, really accurate in what they do. Their body placement, the way they wriggle that extra yard to make it quicker. And so initially, I think it's just been rock solid off phase 1 or 2 defensively, numbering up, trying to get a second player maybe to tag the ball and make it a bit of a fight, keep Leinster off the ground, because when they get to the ground really quickly, it's just really quick rucks all the time. So it's a challenge for them. But I think, if I'm La Rochelle, I'm thinking we've got to play here as well. Respect the opposition, and it's been well publicised how strong Leinster have been this year and how dominant. So if they focus so much on trying to stop Leinster and not playing their own game, well, that doesn't. You've got to get a balance of that right. I always think back to 2008 when we played Toulouse, from Munster Toulouse in the 2008 Heineken Cup Final. We had a real concern about Toulouse and their offloading game. So we had a massive focus heading into that final of trying to tag the ball, keep him in the air, have that kind of choke tackle scenario, which kind of slows him a little bit. So nothing has really changed around that. And again, the plan doesn't work always. But if you need incredible focus, and La Rochelle will need that to stop Leinster. But on the flip side of it, Leinster will be trying to do the same. Slow La Rochelle's ruck down, stop their big runners, stop Antonio if Skelton plays, stop Aldrich getting over the gain line. For any team at this level, if they get over the gain line, they can generate quick ball. And that's when gaps start to appear. Somebody makes a line break and then your defence is in tatters, and it's all about your defensive retreat, if you like, getting back in shape. So, but you've got to be on it for 80 minutes because you just can't switch off. You're playing a very good side. But, they kind of need a little bit of a chip on their shoulder as well. But Leinster, I think, Leinster are experienced enough and will know that they're going to get a physical kind of fight. They've got to kind of step up and match that fight and implement their own game. So, as I said, on paper, and Leinster are rightly favourites because the way they've played. But there's a couple of big lumps in that La Rochelle team that Leinster have got to stop themselves.
Matt, Alan said a couple of big lumps there in the La Rochelle team. Will Skelton back fit, so crucial in that win in the semi-final last year, and he's going to be massive if he is fit and starts this weekend, isn't he?
Absolutely. It starts like all finals. It's going to be won by the forwards. Backs will determine the point score, but the forwards will win it. It's a cliche, but look, it's just the truth. As I said, it's the best Leinster pack I've seen. But you put Antonio at tight head prop and Skelton behind him in the second row, and then forget which other big flanker binds on to Antonio as well with Aldred at 8. The weight coming through the tight head side of the La Rochelle scrum is really extraordinary. And people often, when we look at the scrums, people just go, the front rowers. So much of what happens in a scrum is the power coming behind the props that they can then project onto the opposition. And they're with Skelton on the field, La Rochelle are really generating some serious power. The other thing with Skelton is they don't use him as a jumper in the line-out because they can't bloody lift him. He's too big. But what they use him really well as is a lifter. So he's a 6'7" lifter. Imagine how high a 6'7" dude is lifting someone up in the air. And then the next thing they do, coming around from the ruck, he is usually off a line-out I'm talking about, usually the first forward receiver, and off a scrum the second. And that's where he does his damage. Now, Alan spoke about not allowing La Rochelle didn't want Leinster or wanted to stop Leinster from winning the gain line consistently. What Skelton gives La Rochelle is the gain line when he gets the ball, because he is a gifted runner. I've seen Will play since he was a young boy in Sydney. He played for combined high schools many years ago at a schoolboy level. It was the first time I saw him. He was an extraordinarily big man, even at that stage of his life. His other second-row partner that day was about 6'2", and Skelton literally had to bend down to bind on him. In the second row, he was that big. But he gives them the go forward. And there's enough. And then I'll switch to the other side. He humiliated Leinster last year. Now, no rugby player likes to be humiliated. And everyone has since said, Leinster got bashed up by La Rochelle, especially Skelton. Now, I reckon he's got a target on his chest that the Leinster boys are going to hit. Leinster are angry about what happened last year. There's a bit of revenge in what they're going to try and get. And I think Skelton is a hugely important guy. But I also think that we're overlooking one thing, and that's Gregory Aldred. His numbers are off the planet. Let me just tell you, He's got the most carries in the competition, 113. Second most in all these categories, 731 metres made, 28 defenders beaten, 15 offloads, 8 turnovers. Second in all of those. First in carries, second in all those others across the tournament. I mean, they're mind-boggling numbers for one man. And while Skelton will have a big impact on the game, Leinster have to somehow find a way to not negate Aldred because he's far too good, but they have to limit him. And that's easier for me to say sitting here in my room here in France than for Leinster to do because he's a great player. So La Rochelle have got multiple forwards and backs, but especially up forwards that Leinster find a way to nullify.
Alan, another battle I want to look at, the number 10s, West. It looks like it's going to be against Johnny Sexton. Two lads at very different sort of parts in their career. I look at West. You know, he's obviously missed kicks in the final last year, also missed kicks last weekend or in the semi-final, I should say. What do you make of Ohio West? Another big afternoon for him. Can he step up this time?
Yeah, well, it's none of us like to see players kind of missing kicks the way he's missed them. Every player is going to miss one here and there, but he's not a high percentage kicker, and that's the reality. I think Ronan's kind of hand has been dealt a little bit with Jules Plisson. He's been injured this year, and probably a lack of depth in that fly half position. It's an area that's. I know Pierre Popelon came on the last day, and he's a kicker as well. He's a pretty young player, but I think Ohio West does in open play. He's dangerous. He's a really good footballer. He's a good stepper, but there's a deficiency there, and there's a difference between him and what he does and what Sexton does, and that's a concern. It's a big concern because I think if La Rochelle have a chance of winning this game, it's going to be tightish. If Leinster get their tails up and get a lead, well, they're very difficult to claw back, and I think they could win by 10 or 15 points if they get ahead. But I think if La Rochelle are to make a real fist of this, it's going to be a tight game. And then the worry in one's head would be if it's going to be a tight game. You know, Leinster can still win a tight game because they can kick those penalties, those conversions. And I just think Ohio West, there's no confidence there, even when he stands over the ball. If you're a La Rochelle fan, they don't have probably that confidence in him. But, you know, he could come good. Maybe he'll have one of those days where he kicks well. Look, whatever happens, I would... For La Rochelle losing this game, I would hate for one player like him to be blamed and said, well, he's missed 3 easy kicks and Leinster have won it by 5 or 6 points. None of us want to see that in sport. It's in any level. But I just think the reality is he's not a high percentage kicker, and that puts him at a disadvantage because Sexton will nail his kicks. If there's a penalty in the 78th minute from the touchline for Leinster to win it, well, there's a confidence and there's a swagger about Sexton, and there's a quality in his kicking that you think you'd fancy him to nail it. You wouldn't fancy Ohio West to nail one from the touchline to win it for La Rochelle. But in saying that, it's the hand they're dealt. They don't have the options, and you know, I suppose kickers with lower percentage rates, sometimes they have a day where they get it right. And he missed kicks last year, which kind of cost him in that final against Toulouse. But there's an obvious advantage there, and that's just the reality.
Matt, are you surprised Ronan O'Gara stuck with Ohio West? Or, as Alan said about Plisson being injured, has he got no other option? Or how do you see that?
I think his hands are tied a bit without knowing the exact details of Ronan's budgets and contractual situation, because in France you have what they call the GIF, which is basically you've got to have a certain percentage of players who have come through the academy system in France in your club. Now, I don't know where La Rochelle sit with that, but you have to stick by that percentage. And unfortunately, West, who is a good, as Alan said, in general players, is a quality player. This year he's kicking 78%. And the difficulty is against Leinster last year, he kicked 5. I think it was 5 from 5. Might have been 5 from 6, but he kicked very well in the semi-final last year. But he has days where he just loses confidence, and that was in the quarterfinal. The semi-final last week against Racing. You could see his whole body language drop. And I think if Ronan had some alternatives, I think he definitely would have played them, and he certainly would have played them last week against Stade Francais in La Rochelle. Now Ronan was caught a bit. It was a must-win game for La Rochelle in the top 14 because they were 1 point out of the final 6, which is the playoff, the cutoff for the playoffs in the top 14. Now, they came out and won easy, but he played West. Now, they had other guys come on the field, they did, but that would have been the day you try someone else. Now, as it turns out, La Rochelle won there. I think they're 4th now in top 14, so they can rest. They know they've got one more game. It's going to be. They could still miss out, but they're in a pretty good shape. And then he can concentrate on this game. And they're in a final, so obviously Ronan really wants to win the final, so he'll put the best guy out. I think that will be West, despite his kicking. I think he'll put him out.
Oh, I think you mentioned earlier, if La Rochelle are to win, it will be collisions and gain line. Is that the game plan you expect them to play? Or do you think they could surprise us a wee bit?
Well, they have some very, very dangerous players. Jonathan Dante at 12. You want to try and get the ball in his hands. He can be devastating. He's carrying his offloading ability, and he's kind of had a bit of a resurgence with France this year and been really important for them. Raymond Rule, Dylan Lades, the 2 South Africans, very, very dangerous as well. Jules Favre, really good player. I think for this game, they probably got to get Bottia back in that midfield somehow or another. But can you play Bottia and Dante as a 12-13? I'm not so sure. Can Dante play it outside centre? Maybe Matt will know more about that. But it's a tough ask for him. It's a tough ask. I think the type of game. They're probably the best defensive maul in France. Defensively, they're the best team in France from the stats. So they're a very hard nut to crack. And I think we're probably basing some of our opinions on what we saw in the semi-final against Stade Francais. It was a dreadful game. Both sides cancelled each other out. No flow in the game. 2, 3, 4 phases, max, penalty, knock-on, turnover. So stop-start. So you would hope that both sides cancelled each other out. When you look the previous day at Leinster-Toulouse and you just see the quality, the execution. And if the reality here is La Rochelle stand off Leinster and allow them play like that, sometimes there's very little you can do because their lines are running and their timing and their catch pass and their evasion is superb. And they're all clued into what they want to do. So, and one of the big things for me is work rate and fitness levels. I think Leinster are incredibly fit. They're conditioned so well. There's an explosive power and probably heavier players than some of the La Rochelle players. Can they play at that tempo? So Kerr Barlow probably not going to be playing either is a big loss. I think he's a huge loss to La Rochelle because he's like an extra wing forward, the way he can poach ball. His kicking game is really good. He puts in so many tackles and he's so strong and physical. So I think La Rochelle have got to stick to their own game plan. I'm sure they'll target Leinster at scrum time. They'll try and maul against them. And they're probably more of a direct side. But they have some subtle touches. If West gets good quality ball and gets it, Raymond Rule, Dante, these fellas, they're good footballers. They're very good players. And I think they can be a bit more expansive. But the reality is they've got to really impose themselves up front. That's where La Rochelle's strength is. And I think Leinster's is just balanced right across the board, really. There's very little weakness in their side.
Matt, last one on the final from you. Leinster, they've been chasing this 5th European trophy for a while now. They'll be so hungry for it. Do you feel it is theirs to win, really? Even though La Rochelle got beaten in the final last year, I wouldn't say more hungry, the sides, but do you feel it is Leinster's there to be won.
Stewie, I've said before that to win the Heineken Cup, you've got to get the stars to align. Some years it's just not meant to be. There's injuries, you get a bad draw. Leinster, you want to play a running game, but it's a wet day. There's a whole lot of things that come into play. And obviously the last few years we've had the pandemic, which has affected away games and all this sort of stuff. In the playoffs last year, Leinster on the road for the quarterfinal and the semi-final, couldn't go home. So there's all those factors. On the other side, some years they just fall. Everything seems to fall into place. You look at this Leinster side that's going to run. Now we're assuming that Furlong's going to make it. That's the word we're getting, and James Lowe's going to make it. That is a full Leinster team. That is Leinster fit, fast, ready to rock. They're playing in a big stadium. This is basically the Irish team. Except for a few positions, the Irish team. They've been playing in big away stadiums around the world. This is an away game for La Rochelle as well. They haven't played in a giant stadium for a long, long time. Now, there's some great players there, but they still have done it in the past. But doing it every single week just means it's another day at the office. So I just think the stars have hit their exact position where they should be for Leinster. And the other part that everyone says, Leinster are favourites, that puts pressure on them. Leinster are angry. This is an angry team. This is an unhappy team with what's been said about them, what's been said about their coach. And they're there to prove to the world some things. So I do think there is a real momentum behind Leinster. The first 20 minutes of this game will be absolutely crucial because what Leinster have done in the quarter and the semi is they've had the game almost won at half time. If Leinster get 3 scores ahead, it's really hard to come back because they'll get a fourth somewhere. And that's what they've done. So all of those factors, plus a huge travelling contingent that are going over to Marseille from Leinster, I think will really, really put La Rochelle up against it. And let's remember, La Rochelle kicking at 78%, no Curbalo. Victor Vito, I would not be surprised if he does not play. He hurt his ankle last week. As I say, Rog had to roll the dice about top 14, and unfortunately that was a casualty. Now, he might make it, but I doubt it. And the last one, of course, is that if Will Skelton starts, he's a giant human being and he hasn't played for over a month, 5 weeks, and he's not going to be match fit. The giant of the man he is, he takes 4 or 5 games to get to his best. So it's really stacked against La Rochelle and it's stacked for Leinster. And I just think this is the time. This is the time for them. It's time for the 5th star. And if we then spin to the horrors of rugby that we've all experienced, the team that loses is just going to be devastated. There's one team's got redemption, one team's going to get a second scar of losing a second Heineken Cup final. And it's like Quinny said, I'm not looking forward to that for anyone. I got friends in Ronan on one side and friends in Leo on the other. And I wouldn't wish the pain on any of them, but someone's going to wear it come 8 o'clock Saturday night.
Well, it's certainly going to be fascinating anyway. Alan, if we turn to you for a different topic, European Player of the Year, Josh van der Flyers to lose, is it? What do you think? You're on that panel?
Yeah, I'm on a panel for European Player of the Year, and it's been a strange year, really. I think if you look back on what happened in the pool stages and the way they were badly disrupted with COVID, it was a shame, really. Credit to EPCR. They got criticism for the 0-0 draws and awarding matches to one team and the other. Leinster had a big beef over the Montpellier game, but it was a tough situation on everyone. And I was mightily relieved to see the round 16 games, the quarterfinals, the semi-finals, the quality, the crowds, the flags, the colour, and we're always pretty proud here in Ireland with, particularly, the support and the energy that Ulster generates when you go to the Kingspan. Incredible atmosphere there for that Toulouse game. The travelling people who went to Toulouse, the Ulster fans, the Connacht Leinster games, they were great occasions. Sports ground, the Aviva, and of course, Munster, Exeter. Again, loads of Munster people went over to Exeter against all the odds. They got away with, was it 13-8, 5-point deficit, and then they turned them over in Thomond Park. Again, great energy and atmosphere in all those games, and then the quarterfinals of the Aviva. Toulouse, Munster, incredible reconnection with the fans. I think for Munster people, give them a little bit of hope. Maybe it's a bit of false hope, but there was hope. There was energy there, and then Toulouse, Leinster, sea of blue there. Incredible occasion for that semi-final as well. So I think the competition has really taken off in the knockout stages, and the players have responded. So we have a short list. We had 15 players picked in February. Pretty wide list after the pool games. A tough one to pick because there was a certain amount of players who didn't play a lot of games, but kind of got into that 15 with a view of possibly their team being in the knockouts and being in the mix for the final. It's been whittled down after the quarters and semis, and we've now got Josh van der Fleer, Caelan Doris, James Lowe. He wasn't on that original 15, but I think the way he's played in the knockouts and the tries he scored he's been sensational. Gregory Aldred and Antoine Dupont, and a few comments about Dupont online and stuff, and comments on different websites. But I thought he was brilliant against Munster. He was nullified, but he still had that touch of class that shows that he's just a world-class player. And even in the Leinster game, when he was under massive pressure, he was just trying things, little subtle touches of brilliance. And Leinster obviously were very dominant. So he got in there, and I think you could have 2 or 3 more Leinster players here. I thought Jimmy O'Brien, who was on the original list, has been absolutely brilliant for Leinster. A bit of an unsung hero for him. He doesn't want to be called the unsung hero. He wants to get on the Irish team and develop his game more, and get up to that international status like all of his teammates. He's been brilliant, Jimmy O'Brien. Hugo Keenan, very unlucky to be not in that top 5. I think his consistency has been, sensational. Gibson Park. You could put more Leinster guys in there. So ultimately, the winner usually comes from the winning team. So if La Rochelle win the game, you think maybe Gregory Aldred. He always has a big game, doesn't he, Matt? It could be Gregory Aldred. If Leinster win it, it's between James Lowe, Josh van der Fleer, and Caelan Doris. I suspect all of those 3, if Leinster win, will play well because they seem to be always playing well. But Josh van der Fleer, and this decision is not going to be made till the end of the game on Saturday. We have a meeting on Saturday morning to kind of discuss the credentials of the candidates and go through some of their stats. Like Matt produced the stats for Aldred, which are off the charts. The carries, the turnovers, meters made, all that kind of stuff. Incredibly impressive. So Josh van der Fleer is the one that's probably just has his nose out in front. But that can all change on Saturday. But it's great, and it's a great honour. It's a great honour for these players because most players will tell you, Stuart, that it's all about the team. It's all about the team. But deep down, you get an award like this. It's one you can hang on the wall, show the grandkids, and they're special moments. I just wish they were there in 2008 when I probably had my best season with Munster. Got loads of man of the match awards that year. Got nominated for Munster Player of the Year at our awards dinner, and got a bit of a crooked vote with the Cork crowd. Rog got the nod in the end, and he felt a bit guilty as well. I'm okay to say that, but I had a really good season by my, after coming back from a lot of injuries, and we won the final. So it only started in 2010, so I kind of have this mock one in my mind that's hanging somewhere in the house, but it's not. But it's a lovely thing for him, and I think when you think of Van der Fleer, the way, he was nominated for Six Nations Player of the Year as well. His consistency in his game has gone to a different level. We know how special Caelan Doris is. And James Lowe is just, what a kind of season, second half of the season he's had as well with Leinster, the tries he's scoring and the energy he brings. So 5 worthy candidates, and one of them will be obviously crowning a winner's medal, most probably crowning a winner's medal with a European Player of the Year. That's not for anyone to say, to be running out to the bookies now and saying that I'm giving it. I don't know who's going to win this, because it's obviously dictated by the performance in the final, and it'll be add to a very special day. Most probably whoever wins it.
Quinny, if you pass around some brown paper envelopes at breakfast, you still might be able to win one, mate. You still might be able to.
Well, I might get one retrospectively, yeah.
Yeah, retrospectively, get one real rewarded for yourself, mate.
Yeah.
Matt, good to hear he's still not bitter about it. Matt,
I can push EPCR about that one.
Matt, only a decade ago.
your take on the competition, Matt. I think we all know your thoughts when Montpellier came to Dublin and it was 80 points and not even going to go there. But has the knockout stages improved it for you? There have been some really good matches, to be fair, as Alan said, and also Josh van der Flaer for you, or who do you think will pick up that award? Will Aldrich pick it up?
Mate, my favourite competition, I was involved in Super Rugby. I'm involved over here in Magners League. Heineken Cup is just special. There's something, it's got an X factor. It's the best competition in the world. I really disagree with the restructure of the tournament. I agree with Quinny. During the pandemic, it's hard. It was hard, and the EPRC deserve great credit for getting it even finished. Since the round of 16, the games have been spectacular. It's been wonderful. There's no two ways about that. But the problem I have with it is, how do you get to the round of 16? And it's going to happen again next year. And I think what everyone in Ireland should be really wary of, that this restructuring is definitely aimed at reducing Ireland's influence in the tournament. This is much, much easier for the big French and English clubs to make the final with the round of 16 and only 4 lead-up games. So we have to be really aware of that, and we really should have spoken out a lot harder. And the EPRC did the little political thing and snuck it out the week of the semi-finals, the announcement. They said it was only going to be for the COVID year. Sure enough, here it is. It's in next year. This benefits the French clubs, benefits the English clubs, and denigrates the Celts and the Italians. And remember, we've got the South Africans in next year. You're going to have a turnaround of going down to Cape Town, or worse, Joburg or Pretoria at altitude, and come back. So the competition is going to change radically next year. So it's a year for us to look at. Once the playoffs get here, I love it, mate. It is great rugby. It is sensational rugby. I've really enjoyed the commitment of the players, the way the game is changing. There's a lot more running, a lot more passing, a lot more open play than we saw a couple of years ago. Rushing defence is getting smacked the way it should be, straight on the nose, and I'm happy about it. And Josh van der Flaer, for me, his game is just improved so much in the last 18 months, 12 months. He, as Quinny said, he took it to another level. Before, we'd see Josh playing well for Leinster, but he seemed not to be able to take that form into the international arena. He dominated, and when I say dominated, he just played so magnificently for Ireland, and he's carried that form on for Leinster. So if Leinster win, he'll get it. But if La Rochelle win, it's against the odds. Gregory Aldrich, for my book, must get it, because he will have to have a stormer of a game, one of his great games, to empower La Rochelle to win. So either way, I think there's very worthy recipients that you couldn't argue with either way if they're behind the winning team and they have a big match on finals day.
Yeah, indeed. Right, lads, for the final time this season, I can see you're both smiling. Can we have some predictions for this game on Saturday?
I'll go first, but I'm just going to say, Quinny, you can't sit on the bench with your mate from La Rochelle and Leinster. There's no sitting on the fence this week, mate. It's one or the other. He's my friend too. But look, I think we should be, on a serious note, Ronan getting his club to 3 finals. He hasn't got to the 4th one yet because no one's got there yet. He's been in 3 competitions and he's got his club to 3 finals. Win, lose or draw on Saturday, Rowan O'Gara has done a phenomenal job. And I got to say this, I really feel for him, because I don't think his team this week has enough to win. I think Leinster, usually in this competition, the best team of the season wins the final. And that's where you should put your money, and I think that'll be Leinster. They've been far too good, and I think their preparation is too good. They've got all their players on deck. La Rochelle don't. It's stacked against La Rochelle and stacked for Leinster, and I think that's the way we'll see it at full time.
And yourself, Alan?
Yeah, I think, look, everybody's been talking Leinster up, and I think they've shown that there's a special team there at the moment, and they deserve massive credit. They've been knocking on the door in Europe for a long time now, and being in finals, winning finals, getting to knockout stages consistently, and they're just a strong brand, and they have incredible players. So to stop that, I think La Rochelle and Ronan's team are he won't want me saying this, but they're in the start of the journey. Winning, and competing in 2 levels is very difficult. France is very, very competitive, the league, and it's pretty taxing on teams. Europe is the elite, and I think Leinster are the elite at the moment, and that doesn't guarantee him will turn up tomorrow and win in Marseille. But I think, from what we've seen, they're the more balanced side, and I think that they will win it. But there's just a part of me, they're the facts, and a part of me then just thinks Roger was an inspirer in our dressing room, and he was an incredible speaker, and he could motivate people. And Donncha, incredible. You talk about hard work and desire and real honesty. Donncha Ryan, he was like that as a player. So they've got to find something special, La Rochelle, and I hope we get a great final, because I think if we get a final, Leinster fans and Leinster would love to win by 15 or 20 points and be really comfortable and be singing and chanting for the last 20 minutes of the game. I hope from the neutrals' point of view that we get a great game, but I think Leinster will win it. I think Leinster are too good, too strong, and I'm expecting a phone call after this when Mr. O'Gara listens to the podcast.
Well, lads, let's hope it's a classic. Don't forget to join us at Virgin Media 2 on Saturday afternoon. Man, it's been an absolute pleasure all season. Let's hope for a great final. Thanks for joining us.
Cheers. Thanks, Stuart. Thanks, Matt.
Quinny out.